Welcome to the Logistics Point interviews. Today I'm joined by Paul Needler, a partner at Arcadis. We're going to talk about multi-story warehousing. Uh, Paul, thank you very much for joining me today.
Good
And
morning. Thanks for inviting me.
I think that it's very important to start with the question of when we're talking about multi-story warehousing, what is it?
Yeah, it's a really important and interesting question to ask because I think it's one of those terms that's often a catch-all, Nick. And when people talk about multi-story, you're sometimes in a conversation and you realize that you're actually talking at cross purposes. I mean, at its core, quite naturally, it means anything where the goods are stored in the warehouse on more than one level rather than it just being in a racking solution. But really, what distinguishes the different types for us is the way that those goods are then moved vertically. So we see instances at the moment where there are live sites in the UK which are multi-story, but effectively there's some kind of a mezzanine level. So all of the goods come into dock levelers at a normal ground level, and then the internal vertical transportation is what moves them between the levels. So that will be via internal lifts or something like that. And that differs from what we probably talk of as a full multi-story facility, where there are external ramps, which means that all the vehicular access can get up to a dock levelers and loading bays on upper levels, whether it's a single level or multiple levels above ground, so that it's effectively runs as a potentially separate facility.
And a lot of people are also looking into costs. So one of the things will be how expensive is it compared to other more traditional warehousing models?
Indeed, and I think one of the challenges and one of the things that often puts people off from a development point of view of looking at multi-story developments is that expectation, and indeed it's a fact that they do cost more in terms of the construction cost. There's upgraded foundations, you've got the frame to think about. It's much more complex in terms of that structural frame and building the additional levels. And of course, if you are then providing ramps and access for HGVs and vans to gain access to the upper levels, then that can add significantly to the cost. But one of the reasons I think this is a really important thing to look at is actually the construction cost of the facility itself is only one of the factors in the overall development appraisal. And what we're starting to see is that in certain locations, the cost of the land is becoming so high that actually it becomes more cost effective to buy potentially a smaller plot of land and build upwards than to buy a large plot of land and do everything at the ground level.
And who is it for? People who are watching now are wondering, well, is it for me? How do they decide?
I think it's going to become most prevalent where, as I just said, the costs of land are really high. So it's going to be city centre locations, in and around London, inside the M25, is probably going to be a scenario where potentially the land cost and the balance between the land cost and the premium for going upwards is going to make it start to look attractive. And I think that's one of the challenges for the developers is to understand, well, actually, very early on in the development, when they're looking at potentially purchasing a site or an appraisal, actually, should they even be considering it? Is it likely to be more commercially beneficial for them, give them greater returns, and the demand from their potential tenants to even consider looking at multi-story, or actually should they forget it? And because of the additional cost of the construction, actually they'd be better to just focus on sticking with a grade facility.
And let's talk about what Arcadis is doing specifically in the area of multi-story, because you have created a tool which can actually help people decide what you were talking about. Is this a good thing for me or not?
We have. I mean, one of the things that we realised from talking to some of our developer clients and other clients around the market is that it's not particularly common to see multi-story facilities in the UK and across Europe. It is quite common over in the Far East, whereas Arcadis, we've got a lot of experience of supporting developments of that nature. And I think whenever something is new, naturally, developers look to de-risk their developments, as do their funding partners. So there's some trepidation, I think, that comes into even looking at these schemes. So what we've just developed is a quite simple tool to help really early on in the discussion, probably before the site's even been purchased, help that very high level conversation as to, well, actually, what is the balance in terms of likely residual profit for a typical grade level facility compared to a potential multi-story facility on the same site. There's lots of variables that come into play when looking at this. It's not just about the construction cost. Obviously, there's the overall site area, there's the location, there's the land value. there's the likely rent that the developer might get and the impact that might have on yield, and also the financing cost and the whole risk profile changes. So all of those variables all can impact on the overall viability. So we've created a relatively straightforward and easy to use tool that we can run with developers in a live scenario to help them understand, actually, is there a potential that a multi-story facility at a particular site might return them a greater residual profit than a traditional grade level facility? You could run that exercise in 20, 30 minutes. And actually, I think that would then give them the confidence to say, well, actually, should we therefore investigate a little bit further whether that is really a viable solution? So it's really just helping them make informed decisions at the very early stages of the development based on some of the variables that are in play.
And if you have to finally sum up multi-story, what do you think will be the one thing that people should know about it?
I think it's inevitable. I think intensification of urban locations for logistics development is really important, particularly with the ongoing demand for space, for housing and for other uses. So I think developers shouldn't be afraid of looking at multi-story developments. I think there's great opportunities for them to maximize their profit. In some cases, get up to 50% more profit on a site by going for multi-story. So it's about going in with your eyes open, and that's where somebody like Arcadis, with our tool, we can come and help you make those early informed decisions so that you can move forward through the phases of the development with some confidence that actually you are taking steps to maximize your return on investment, and at the same time improve the facilities for the community around you.
Oh, thank you very much for your time today. And if you want to read and learn more about multi-story and how Arcadis can help you, you can find a bit more information in the description. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure.